And we're recording. Okay. Good day. Oh, no, now we're recording. It took a little while. It hiccuped. Hi, everybody. It's Jill here from Illuminating Women, and I want to welcome you here to during this COVID-19. We are coming to you with our membership who have valuable professional tips to give you. And I'm so excited to bring to you this lady. You know, when I think about who do I need to bring out to talk to and share their information, it's just been purposefully and mindfully thought about what do we need to hear where so much is going on and so much uncertainty, and continue to look at the Illuminating Women YouTube channel to see all of the videos that we're doing and these workshops to our coffee break and connects. And it's a wonderful opportunity to get together, to just check in and to learn and spread this information. So today is about having those candid conversations. And I've known Maureen Kures for a while, and she is a retired ICU nurse. And she's very passionate about families, and she's very passionate about having those difficult conversations that are an absolute, you know, where they'll tell you there's two things in life that are absolutely certain: death and taxes. And those two things we just don't like to talk about. Well, she's coming here today. She has a brand new business that she has launched because she so cares deeply about you. She cares deeply about our families, and she cares deeply about communities. So Maureen, welcome today. And as we're going through this, can you just share a few things and tell us a little bit about yourself, and then please teach us today how we can help each other and our families.
Okay, yeah, today I'm going to be talking about the need for candid conversation. So about a year ago, through a chance conversation, I've gone on this journey where I started a business called Radiant Mourning. And it's about having candid conversations now, well before we ever need them, to change the end of life for ourselves and our family members. Because the importance of that truly does change our end of life. So thanks, Jill, for this opportunity to speak to you. I am passionate about it. I was an ICU nurse. My passion is oncology and hospice, and I worked bone marrow transplant for many, many years. So I've seen the gamut of death. So I love to talk about death because people are afraid to talk about death. And it's not scary if we prepare. It's scary when we don't. And so I'm going to share my screen. My slideshow, if I put it on my computer, just shows black. So I'm going to just share it the way it shows up right now. So today I want to talk to you about having those candid conversations in the era of COVID-19. And okay, well, I'm going to have to manually do my slides. So I saw a beautiful day in the neighborhood, and Mr. Rogers, Tom Hanks's Mr. Rogers, had this beautiful saying that he said as this gentleman was dying, and I'm going to read it to you because I just think it's so profound. Death is something many of us are uncomfortable talking about, speaking about, but to die is human, and anything human is mentionable, and anything mentionable is manageable. And I just think that says it all. It's so beautiful. And if we just look at it that way, it's manageable. So we're going to get into talking about why it's manageable. First of all, you know, I'm talking about conversations with our parents, and Jill brought up before the call that it's important to realize that many people are alone during this. As we just here in the Seattle region had our Washington State had our shelter in place, stay at home, whatever we're calling it, extended to May 4th. And that's overwhelming for a lot of people that are alone. I have a friend that's really struggling with this, and just calling in and checking on them every day. Those that are alone or the elderly. You know, my mom, my dad died 10 years ago, and she's alone. And my mom's a goer. She's on the go all the time. She's supposed to be active 83-year-old. And it's been challenging for her. luckily she lives in Southern California. And I told my nephew, why don't you go over? You guys, the weather's good. You can put chairs 6 to 8 feet apart and sit in their front yard. And he did that. And so now she's doing that with a couple of her friends that are really struggling. She's going to drive over and there's going to be 3 of them. They're all going to take their own chairs and sit around the yard. We have a little bit harder time with our weather here right now, but find creative ways to get them, you know, to connect with people that are suffering from this social isolation, because many, many people are. But conversations with our parents, why they're important now. For me, it's so important because, or our parents or people my age, I mean, I'm just a year away from that high risk group of age 60 and over. What's so profound to me now is people are dying from this disease alone in the ICU, alone. I want that to sink in. They cannot have any family members there. They're alone through this. They're scared. And all the people that can be there is the nurse or the doctor going into their room. And when I saw a news clip on this, I was just in tears, because how many times was I at someone's bedside that was dying and they had their family around? Even if it was a dysfunctional, fractured family, the family was still around. And to be there by yourself, alone, knowing that you're going to die. I'm getting teary just thinking of it. That's why these conversations are so vitally important right now. Sorry, I'm getting a little emotional. So, okay, so it's not going to do my transitions, but here's some tips for talking to stubborn parents about social isolation. Do any of you have stubborn parents? I have stubborn mother and stubborn in-laws. So first off, I want you to think, who's the best to have this conversation? It might not be you. It might be one of their good friends that's already bought into this. It might be, you know, a neighbor, or for my mom and my sister and I were just sort of butting heads, because my mom was like, I am fine. I am, you know, I'm fine. And she was going to go to a church event. My mom is out of the house every day and driving all over Southern California, but she just dug in her heels the more we tried to talk to her. So I called my cousin, and my cousin called and got through a little bit more. I'm going to tell you a story later on about how my mother finally agreed to stay home. Another aspect is come from a place of love, not control. None of us like to be controlled. And especially as we age and we feel that we are losing some of the control, it can become a battle. Like I said, it was becoming with my mom. And Vicki taught this great grounding technique in her coffee chat that where you just put your hands, Vicki, will you correct me if I'm wrong, in the creases of your groin. And this is what I've been advising, you know, my siblings and some friends before they're having these challenging conversations, because I'm hearing that their parents, all these parents are stubborn. They don't, you ought to be told by their kids what to do. But I said, just put your hands and, you know, take some deep breaths and just ground yourself, put your feet firmly on the ground. And it's just been such a great tool. So Vicki Draper, I totally thank you for that, because it's quick and it's easy to do. But love, and express your love to them. I love you, and that's why I would love to have this conversation. Ask a lot of questions. Come at it from a question point of view, not telling them, you know, hey mom, what are you hearing about COVID-19? What are your thoughts on this? How do you feel about them telling you you have to, you know, have this shelter in place order? Just any question you can think that draws the conversation out is better than you coming at them, telling them what to do. Share trustworthy information. And, you know, this is really hard to do right now because there is so much misinformation out there. And the trustworthy information is changing so rapidly. It's changing on a daily basis. You know, my husband is a physician. He was off for 5 days. And he started back on Tuesday, and he's like, oh my gosh, whole new ball game than 5 days ago, because they're finding out more and more. And, some things that they were trying aren't working. Trustworthy information for me, there's a lot of different news sources. There's a lot of social media things going around. But for me, NIH, the National Institutes of Health, and that Dr. Anthony Fauci, those are the ones that, or anyone in that, there's a Dr. Gupta out of UW. I think he has a lot of really wonderful information, but go to the sources where there's trustworthy information and share that with them. Don't share sensationalized social media with your parents because they just don't want to hear it. I know, like, my mother and father-in-law live in Chicago, and my husband's been doing battle with them to stay home. And they're in their 80s and the most active 80-year-olds, but he thinks it's all like left-wing conspiracy theory, and that's what a lot of these people think. My father-in-law, in his Eastern European accent, said, "This is all just BS," but he said, it is the whole word, but that's what people are facing. And as it's hitting the Midwest now, these people are fighting back, just like my mom fought back, just like I don't really want to be locked up until May 4th, but share that trustworthy information, come from a place of love. If all else fails, try guilting them into this. I heard a doctor say this, and I was chuckling because that's how my brother got my mother to stay home. And the doctor said, this now, it's like, pull out all the big guns, guilt them, because this could save their life. This could save the life of someone that is being stubborn and refusing to stay home. Like my mother, who was going to this big gala they were having at her church on Saturday night. She was part of the decorating committee. This was back in mid-March, and no matter how I tried to convince her not to go, and the questions and she was going, and they were all fine. Well, my brother from Texas, who has 2 new granddaughters that are a year old, twin granddaughters, called, and she was telling him she was going, and he asked her why she felt the need to go. Well, because she was fine, and her friends that were sitting at her table were fine. And he said, well, I know I'm here in Texas, but what I've heard is that we don't know if we're fine. And he said, so Mom, I support you going, and I will forbid you to see my granddaughters, who live 20 minutes from her, and she adores them. And one of his granddaughters had 5 surgeries the first month of her life and still has some health issues. And she's doing great, but he said, Iris has fought too hard in the first year of her life to be compromised because you are stubborn and need to prove to us that you're not old. So he said, I support you going, and you have to honor my wishes by forbidding you to see my granddaughter because I love her that much. Well, that changed my mom's mind because she loves those granddaughters too. And he guilted her into it. And he said, Maureen, I hated to do that, but she wasn't backing down at all. And that's truly how I felt. So the last thing with our parents is, or anyone in general, is to accept that we can only control us. We can't even control our spouses or really our adult children. We can only control us. And at the end of the day, if we've done everything that we feel is in the best interest of our parents to try to convince them to stay in, or our spouse or our friends, that's good. We've done it, and we can only control ourselves. I just had that conversation with my son's girlfriend yesterday, who's so fearful because her sister is all over town here in Seattle, her twin sister. And she said, she just won't listen to me. And I said, you have to realize you've given her the facts, and now you can just control yourself and what you do. So that's it on the parents. Do any of you have any questions or comments or things that you've tried that work that you want to share real quick?
You'll have to unmute yourself if you want to ask her any questions.
Okay, I'm going to jump on and keep going. I know no one on the call, I don't think, has young kids, and I'm going to deal with talking about young kids, but many people have grandkids. And I think it's important for us and people that might be watching this, I think it's important for us to know how children handle this. So talking to kids about COVID-19, first of all, make them feel safe. Stay calm. So even if you're the grandparent and your grandchild calls you, they're concerned about you and they're worried about you. So stay calm, you know, don't hush your kids if they walk into the room. Even like now I have my adult kids, 2 of them living back at home during this, you know, college age. Don't hush the conversation if they come in the room. That increases their anxiety. And reassure them that this is just temporary. It will pass. That's the one thing that's for sure. We know that throughout history with other pandemics, they do pass. You know, answer questions honestly and age appropriately. Logic sets in about 7 years of age. So really anything younger than that, they can't really comprehend fully from a logical point of view. So using logic with them doesn't work. For 5 and under, they have really magical thoughts. And so they require just short, truthful answers, but short and simple. So I'm going to tell you a little story about magical thoughts. When one of my sons, he was 5, he was in kindergarten, and for a week he started saying, I wish I was dead. I want to die. I wish I was dead. And it started, you know, I started getting concerned. So finally, you know, when I would just sort of brush it by, oh, well, that's an interesting comment. And, but I sat him down finally and I said, you know, why do you wish you were dead? Oh, because I could sit on clouds up in heaven and watch the earth. And I could watch my friends playing. And I said, well, what do you think would happen if you're on that cloud? Oh, if I saw something fun, I could go down, float down and play with them. And I said, well, that's not quite how it works. And if you're dead, I don't know if you'll be on a cloud in heaven. You might be, but I don't know that because I've never been there. But all I know is you'll never be able to come back here and be with us. You'll never be able to play with your brothers or play with your friends, because when you're dead, you're in heaven forever. Oh, he didn't know that, you know, and well, then he didn't want to die. Decided he didn't want to die, but that was that magical thinking about how they can comprehend things. Teens need more truth. They need to be told the facts truthfully, how they can handle them. The truth prevents anxiety within our kids. And that in-between age, they can comprehend longer answers than the short, simple ones, but maybe they don't need as much as the teenagers. You know, my nephew was visiting once. He was about 10 years old, and he kept asking my husband at dinner one night, do you have patients that die? And my husband, he talked around it, and Tim kept going back to, but do you have patients that die? Oh, and my husband talked around it. Finally, I said, yes, Tim, he does have patients that die. He takes care of people that are younger and older, and some of them die. And he said, oh, okay, great. And then he went on to something else, but he was so fixated on wanting to know the facts. So give them clear, concise facts that are age appropriate. Then give them some control. You know, this social isolation is hard on all of us. It's hard on kids. And you can say to them, gosh, this is hard at this moment, isn't it? One thing I know is it will end. In the meantime, what do you want to do? How do you want to communicate with your friends? How do you want to communicate with your grandparents? You know, would you like to do FaceTime? Would you like to do Zoom? Do you want to just do a call? But start giving them control over things that make it easy for them. And let them know what to expect. Social isolation is hard, but talk to them about why it's important and why that 6 feet distance is important. Here's a really great thing. One of my sons just showed me the Mythbusters. They loved that show. My boys did when they were young, but there was one called the sneeze test, and it's fascinating. I go to mythbusters.com, the sneeze test, and watch it. It's about 4 or 5 minutes. And there's another one on contagions. It's a great one to show adults and children alike. It's shocking. They use this infrared dye, and then they shine an infrared light after, and you'd be amazed at how it spread. So I sent that to my mother and father-in-law in Chicago, and they were fascinated by it and didn't realize all that, and they sent it on to some of their friends. But talk to them about the importance of washing hands, that this is a normal thing. This isn't something we're just doing now. Hand washing is normal, and that it's a practice we should do all the time, not just now. Talk to them about seeing people a lot less. That's really hard on kids. They can't see their friends. They can't see their grandparents. They can't see sometimes older siblings. And reassure them that most people will recover. Most people from this that get coronavirus will recover. Some of them won't, but reassure them about that. Ask them open-ended questions. Like, I'm sure you notice that things are different right now. How does that make you feel? How do you feel having to stay home and stay just with your family? How does it make you feel to not be able to go visit your grandparents or play with your friends? And some kids have fear about their own mortality. They have a lot of fear about, will they die from this disease? Especially the younger kids. I've had a number of people tell me that their kids asked, are we going to die from this? So talk to them about their own mortality. Tell them that we've had health problems in our world before, and that we have a lot of really, really smart experts working hard to make our world okay and safe right now. But don't minimize, and then talk about their grandparents. They have fears that their grandparents are going to die, and tell them that's why we're checking in every day. That's why we're making sure they're okay. That's why we're making sure that we can see them on FaceTime or on a video chat. So encourage all of that, and give your older kids, say, hey, look at some of the information that's being put out from the NIH and the doctors that are doing a lot of the research. Have empathy. Allow your kids to express themselves. As I said, this is really hard. And just to say to your children, I imagine you're worried about this. I imagine you're worried about your brother that's living away. I imagine you're worried about your grandparents. Allow them to express themselves that way, and allow them to have their moments of not being able to handle it well, fighting with their siblings, sassing back, anything, have compassion for them. Don't minimize their fears, and don't dismiss their frustrations. You don't have to agree with a child's thoughts. Even my adult children, I don't have to agree with their thoughts to honor them without judgment or dismissal. And it's really important for kids to be heard too. Lastly, if I can get my computer to advance, take care of yourself. Kids sense our stress and anxiety. And the more anxious and stressed we are, the more anxious and stressed they are. So this is a good time to do that grounding technique that Vicki taught us last week. And, take some deep breaths before you deal with your children. Let them show them that you are taking care of yourself. Have them do meditation with you. Bring them into that. Have them, one of my friends, she's making her son write a gratitude journal every day, and he hates it, but he's doing it. Have them talk about the importance of gratitude journal and help them do that. Grandparents can do that from far away too. Call them and say, what are you grateful for today? So, does anyone have any questions on dealing with kids? Like I said, no one that's on the call right now has any children. I don't think of younger children at home, but if you have any questions or comments, let me know.
So I do, Maureen. I have grandchildren. One of them is 7, and so this was very helpful because they live 20 minutes away, but they may as well be across the country right now.
I know.
And so we did Zoom time last Sunday, and I want to do it again this weekend. And those very helpful.
Oh,
But
good.
when you were talking earlier about the, you know, the parents. I don't have parents alive anymore. But when this all first started, my son was freaking out and looking at us as old, and I was the one saying, "Hey, we're not old, we're fine." But you know that over 60, they to a 27-year-old, we may as well be 85.
I know. I know. And, you know, the 60 is ambiguous too, because right now, my husband told me of all the patients on ventilators in the ICU, it's 50s and 60s right now. So none of us are immune. Even younger people are dying, but and this was interesting. We don't have we don't have the memory of the virus. The coronaviruses are very common, the common cold, but our bodies, for those of us that are older, that are not around younger kids all the time, we don't have the memory, the cellular memory of these viruses, and that's why the older population's being hit so hard versus the younger population, because kids carry around coronavirus. And somehow, like especially little kids have built up, it seems that they have more of an immunity unless they're high risk. So I found that very interesting, because I said, "Hey, I called my sister and said, 'You're in the 60 age crowd, so you better watch out,' you know." So, but it's because of that cellular memory. We don't have memory of this, which I thought was interesting. So thanks for sharing, Deborah. And you might want to just check in with your 7-year-old grandchild more often. Okay, we're talking about planning ahead, and I'm going to actually jump back to the social isolation part of this. My son, the same one that thought he could die and sit on a cloud, he's a Boy Scout, and he was saying, "You know, Mom, Dad and I are working in high-risk areas, and I think we need a plan. If one of us gets sick, how would we isolate ourselves within our household?" So we sat down and came up with a plan of what to do and how we would handle it if someone in our household got sick with this virus. Now, we would all be exposed, obviously, but how to keep them isolated and cared for. And it made me start thinking about, my mom, again, lives alone. So I thought, I have to handle this gingerly. So I called my mom and I said, "Gosh, yeah, Mom, you know, Alex, he's the true Boy Scout, be prepared." And I said, he made us come up with a plan of what happens if he or Peter gets sick with this virus and how to protect the rest of the household from really getting sick also. So I said, it got me thinking, have you thought about that? Like, what happens if you would get sick with this, or sick with anything, actually? "Oh, I'm fine. I'm not going to get it." I said, "Well, you probably will not get this because you have been in isolation so long. And if you do, you can't be sick all by yourself." So she finally relented, and we came up with a plan on my nephew moving in with her. But it's important. I had never even thought of that, but that's a really important aspect of this. So to have a plan within your family of how to care for each other. So on to advanced care planning and why it's important. This has been my passion for almost 30 years, ever since I had a traumatic event as an ICU nurse with a family that was not prepared, and they didn't have anyone that could speak on their behalf, and it fractured the family forever. I'm sure almost 30 years later, they're still fractured from this. And it's been my mission ever since to get those that I love and friends and anyone that would listen to me, but to have some sort of advanced care planning done. So we have to realize the fear and uncertainty of COVID-19 is real. And there's uncertainty about who will get sick and how sick one might get. And that the high-risk people are feeling really vulnerable right now. The people with asthma, the people with diabetes, the people with heart disease, they are all feeling very vulnerable through this. So how to limit the uncertainty on this is proactively talk about COVID-19. I'm all about having these conversations about the, what ifs, what if we got this? What if you got COVID-19 and ended up in the ICU? How far would you want to go with treatment? There's something called ask, tell, ask. And I have it on the next slide, and I'm going to explain that to you. But know that talking about this stuff really does lessen the uncertainty, and it lessens the anxiety. There's an organization called the Conversation Project, and 94%, I think, I don't have the numbers right in front of me, of people want to share their end-of-life wishes with those that matter most to them. Yet only about 18%, 18 to 30% have done so because they're afraid to bring up the conversation. And the people that matter most are afraid to bring up the conversation with those that are older because they're afraid that they'll think they just want them to die or something. And that's where it's that fear of talking about death. But this takes away the uncertainty. So this ask, tell, ask model is something that I've run across over time. And it's, ask a question. And here I put advanced care planning. What do you know about advanced care planning? Let them answer and listen. Would it be okay if I told you what I know about advanced care planning? And if they say yes, then you can tell them. If they say no, honor that. But, and advanced care planning is essentially the living will. It's what you want done at the end of your life. After you've told them what you know, ask their thoughts after hearing more information, because oftentimes that clears up things. They might be thinking one thing, you're thinking another. So when you hear their thoughts, it just clears everything up and can keep everyone on the same page. So make a plan. So first, discuss what makes a good decision maker, a power of attorney for healthcare. There's different powers of attorney, but the healthcare power of attorney. And how to choose it. First of all, you want someone that's over 18. Someone that you feel comfortable sharing your wishes with, and someone that will honor those wishes, because it's hard. It's hard to be a healthcare power of attorney. And you need someone that's strong enough to stand up to doctors that are trying to tell you maybe to do something that your loved one would not want done. And someone that's also strong enough to make a decision that you guys never talked about because a question comes up, that can make a decision on your behalf to the best of their ability, that you trust enough to make that decision that has never been discussed to the best of their ability. And like I said, it's hard to be a healthcare power of attorney. I've been a few times, but for my uncle, the doctor was really pushing me to do a surgery that I knew my uncle did not want, because we had many, many conversations about it, and he pushed and pushed. And I finally said no, because you just told me he will not go back to as he was before this big bleed in his brain. And I said, I have to say no. And it was hard, though. It was very hard, and it was very emotional to say that about an uncle that I loved dearly. The medical decision maker, the good medical decision maker, might not be a child or your spouse. It might be too emotional for them. So think about that. My uncle knew that my cousin would be too emotional and would be too hard on her. That's why he chose me. So think about that. Then you choose a medical decision maker, your healthcare power of attorney, and you choose a substitute. It's not a good idea to have dual powers of attorney, because there can be conflicting opinions. Even if they both know your wishes, there can be conflicting powers of opinions about what you want. So make that first one, and then a substitute in case that person cannot act on your behalf. So second is to share your wishes. Really think about, go through some exercises. What's most important to you in your life? Are you comfortable if you say were in a wheelchair, but you could still enjoy your grandkids? You can still interact with life. would that be important to you? Or if you were in a wheelchair, would you just want it to be over with? You know, so really think about that. Think about what's quality of life to you. And think about what kind of medical care you want. I think in COVID-19 era, many of us have heard the stories of people that have chosen not to go on a ventilator. A woman that was in her 90s or 90, I saw this story that she said, no, I have lived a good life. Give it to someone younger that has a chance of survival, because she knew her chance of survival was low. It was at 90, she's probably not going to come off that ventilator. So think about what kind of medical care you want, what's acceptable, how much you would want, at what time do you want CPR, do you want to be, feeding tubes and intubated? And that all depends. Like at 58, hell yeah, I want CPR. At 88, I'd have to really think about my condition. Then think about who needs to know. Who are those that matter most that need to know? And gather them together and sit down and have that conversation and share what you want. And do this before you ever need it, before this COVID-19 brought it so to the surface. We did this with our boys. I learned a lot about what they wanted, but I wanted them to make sure that they knew what I wanted, so that if they had to make those decisions, they would never worry that they made the wrong choice for me, because they knew my wishes, and that they would have unity because all of them know my wishes. It's something that we're doing on probably every other year as we're still younger, but as their dad and I age, I've told them we're having this meeting annually, once we get to a certain age, because I want you to keep up, and I don't want you to ever have to make a decision that you don't know the answer to and then live with regret. So figure out the best way to share your wishes with those that matter most. Personally, I think it's gathering them together for pie at the kitchen table or around the holidays. But there's many ways to do this. And so think about those things. Then get your advance directives done. The living will. The living will, there's controversy over this. The living will allows you to name your decision maker. It gets your wishes in writing, and you can share the documents with those that matter most. And if everyone doesn't agree, sometimes living wills are not considered legal documents. The durable power of attorney for healthcare is the legal document that gives the legal authorization to someone to make decisions on your behalf. And that happens at the time that you are deemed no longer able to make your own medical decisions. And it ends upon your death. A power of attorney. It doesn't continue on after death. But that durable power of attorney for healthcare, and there's one for finance, that's the legal document that guarantees that one person has the legal authorization to speak on your behalf. The others are great. I've heard conflicting opinions on them, whether they're legal or not. That's why I say just really do your homework. 3, I just read the other day, 3 out of 4 people will be unable to make some or all of their own medical decisions at some point in their life. That was staggering to me, that 3 out of 4 people, that's a lot. It might just be for a short time, and it might be for the rest of your life. So really think about who you want, get it in writing, and then share it. So I have some resources for advanced directives. We have something here in the Pacific Northwest called Honoring Choices Pacific Northwest, and it's a wonderful organization, and they do have free advanced directives forms that you can get there. They have a lot of resources and information. It was founded, they started it after Respecting Choices in La Crosse, Wisconsin. La Crosse, Wisconsin has like 96% of their adult population has either full estate planning or advanced directives completed. 96%. I just think that's amazing. If they can do it, why can't we? And it started by this doctor that started asking questions because people were coming for dialysis and they didn't realize they were going to die when the dialysis was no longer effective. So this is a branch that Washington State has taken on. Highly recommend looking at it. There's something called the 5 Wishes, and this is a beautiful document that it has everything spelled out. And I can give you a link if you'd like that. Just send me an email. 5 Wises. It's called 5 Wishes. That's a big typo there. But it has every possible scenario, and then there's room for you to write. And it has the 5 different stages of what you would want done, quite comprehensively. This is where I've heard that Washington State, it is deemed a legal document. It is considered a living will, advance directive. I've been to a couple different talks by different law firms, and they say, no, that is not a legal document and it can be contested. So that's where, once again, the importance of having these candid conversations with your family so they know. LegalShield, as many of you know, I am a representative for LegalShield, and I've always been passionate about their estate planning. It's part of the membership, and they will draft a will and your powers of attorney, and you can have them reviewed and updated annually at no cost above your membership. It's the best deal of the whole LegalShield package, in my opinion. And there's another, prepareforyourcare.org. Prepare for Your Care is an organization that has a lot of advanced care planning information on it. And you can also get advanced directives on their website, state specific, because these are state specific oftentimes. So that's a great place for you to look, especially if you might have relatives in other states like I do. You can guide them there or pull up for their state and send it to them and say, hey, have you thought about doing this if they do not have their estate planning done? But I'm passionate about this part of it because this is what allows us to die with peace and dignity if those know that we love and that matter most to us know what matters most to us at our end of life. So that's it. That's all, folks. Any questions about any of this?
Well, Maureen, I have to tell you, I think right now this is so important, and it takes a wake up when we have a pandemic and people get sick and you don't know, and being prepared, because we never know the unknown, and it's almost like Murphy's Law. If you do it and you take care of it ahead of time, it'll be wonderful. This is powerful. And a couple of things, the takeaways that I loved about when you talked about children, and I took a bunch of notes here. The magical thoughts. I love rewording that for there. I love the fact of giving them the myth busters, because there's so many kids that myth busters. And even through your teenagers, getting it clear and being real, right? And I think that's so important. Asking those open-ended questions are great. It's have a plan. You know, I don't think any of us, we had to, because our son is in the grocery industry, and we had to have a plan that if something happens, and you hear about people, how you sequester part of the house and cleaning at the door, you know, there's just all this cleaning that we're unaware, because they're learning more and more about the virus, you know, what we need to do. And having that proactive talk. My one question is the statistics again. So you're saying 18%, only 18% of the people will have the, you know, 90%, if I got this right.
About 90% want to. And you know, let's say our elderly population, 90%, but it's between 18 and 30 that about 30% of the people have actually done any estate planning or end of life planning documented and done. But it's between 18 and 30% that have actually had these conversations with their families. So it's a low number. And then they end up blindsided because their mom has a heart attack at age 62 and ends up in the ICU brain dead on a ventilator. And now we're seeing it with coronavirus. You know, I mean, this virus is hitting fast. It's hitting where you feel fine. You don't even know you're sick. Then all of a sudden you're sick, and then you're in the ICU on a ventilator and dead within 2 days. I mean, it's fast. So statistically also, it's proven that those people that have had these conversations, they recover, not that they recover from grief, because you will grieve the rest of your life. I grieve my dad every day, but it's a gentle, peaceful grief now. It's not that hard, anxious grief, but that those that have had the conversations, that have their planning in order, actually those left behind suffer from depression significantly less than those that have not had these conversations. They're so important all around. So, great. You're muted, Jill.
That's great. Does anybody else have any other questions?
I'm just going to make a comment. It really is important. I've had the real honor to sit with people at the end of life as well. And being able to speak about it and what's going on has been a real great, it unburdens the person who is dying. It unburdens you as well, knowing that you know where they're really at instead of your own crazy thoughts. So yeah, I think we had somebody in our BNI group that I used to belong to. One of their employees, his sister died at 24 yesterday. 24.
Of COVID-19?
Yeah, of COVID. In the healthcare, her husband has it. She's got little kids. I mean, she was asking for prayers, and 4 hours later she posted she passed. She just.
It's quick, you guys.
Yeah.
It's quick. But people do know. I mean, people that are dying, they want to talk. They want to share. And that's the one thing that always amazed me over time, is that the people that are dying are not afraid to share. It's they're afraid to upset their family members. And then the family members miss out on these beautiful, rich stories, or these moments of grace that are given, that it's such a shame, those that don't have that. But yeah, this COVID-19 is changing everything. So thanks for sharing, Jenny.
So Maureen, is there, if there's not any other questions, if somebody wants to work with you, yes, how can they reach you? And
They can reach me through my website, through my website should go live this week, through my email, which is Maureen at Radiant Mourning. They can call or text. And I do also have a program that is launching in the very near future. It's more of an online program. So I'd love to share information as that becomes available. It should be available by the second or third week in April. Yes.
Can I just remind people that it's mourning, MOUR?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Jenny.
that is great. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording right now, and I want to just thank everybody for popping in today and to learning, and we'll just stick on, the rest of us can stick for a few minutes and just kind of do another touch basis, how we're feeling, because I love that, Maureen, that you brought up, to ask people, how are you feeling? And I think we're going to get more able to share that. So I think that's a wonderful thing. Thank you, everybody, for popping in. Thank you, viewers who are watching this. Share that video. Maureen is a delight to work with. She's been there. She knows this. As a person who has worked in the funeral industry a few years back, I will tell you, I saw a lot, and this is just something that is a must to do, and do it with the dignity and the grace and the love. So that I love that last part where you said, those who do have these plans in place suffer, their families, they're ones that are left behind. I don't want to say behind, but just left until
they meet again.
without the, yeah, that they're a lot less depressed. And I will say I saw that in the funeral industry too, and just getting those plans even taken care of there. So that is fantastic. I'm going to stop the recording. Thank you everybody for popping in, and you have a wonderful life. Safe and stay healthy and take care. Bye-bye. All righty.